yeah, we'll have a nice time. And if you do badly, the chupacabra will get you.
According to my grandma, yeah.
Yeah, man, your grandma. I was just thinking about my stepdad, because he told me like the most bent version of La Llorona, where it was like basically like La Llorona had two little boys. It's like, okay, because I'm the only kid here and I'm a little boy, and it was like, the wind is her song, and if you get up in the middle of the night, oh no, you'll think you're listening to the wind, and then it'll turn out, no, it's her song. And once you hear her song, you have to go to her. She loves little boys like you, and she will drown you. And I'm just sitting there like 8 years old, like completely mortified. So
this podcast is about why horror scares us, what deep, dark, secret, scary cinema shines a light on. The discussions are frank and involve conversations about abuse, trauma, and mental health. There are also spoilers, so keep that in mind too. Now, sharpen your machetes and straight razors, because this is Cutting Deep into Horror.
I am your co-host, Enrique Couto, here with Celise.
That's me, I'm Celise.
And I am excited for a number of reasons. Only if one is that someone is matching my love of pink, as Celise is doing.
Are you a pink lover?
I mean, my mic, I put on my pink mic screen for you, but I already owned it. So clearly, I'm already a goner.
I love it. Thank you for that.
Oh, de nada. But so I discovered Celise on YouTube because she does awesome horror movie content, horror movie reviews, and they really tickled me. And I mean it. I was just kind of surfing around, and I saw your channel, and I was like, okay, this is somebody I want to talk to about horror movies. Because what made me interested in this is I love the concept of the jaded horror fan, but not because I love the idea of being a jaded horror fan, but because I find that most horror fans, even if they think they're jaded, it turns out they're actually not. That they're actually scared little kids, just like me. I'm a massive horror movie fan. I've been a horror movie fan my whole life, but I am a little scaredy cat. I'm a little baby when it comes to things that really scare me. I sit up at night watching a random horror movie on Netflix, and I'm like, this movie isn't even that good. And then when it's over, I'm like, oh man, I have to go pee, but like, I got to look behind the shower curtain first. Like, I don't know, man. Like, is it worth the risk? What if there is someone behind the shower curtain? So that's kind of my thing. That. Yeah. And so with you've been a fan ever since I heard on one of your streams, ever since there was a miscommunication about Chucky when you were a little kid. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes. For those who don't know, when I was a little baby, my aunt was like, oh, what do you want like for your birthday? And I was like, I want the new Chucky Rugrats movie. And she was like, okay. And I guess she must have went into this like video store and said, oh, I want the Chucky movie. And whoever was working there was like, oh, Child's Play. Got it. Cool. And I guess like my aunt just didn't even look at it. She probably didn't even realize. And then she gave it to me, and I decided to watch it one day when my mom was at work and I was just at home with my brother at the time. And I put it in the VHS player and it started playing, and I was like, wow, this is a really long commercial. Like, when are the Rugrats gonna come? And like at first I thought it was like a normal movie. And then there was the moment where like the mom picks up Chucky, and he's like, you stupid bitch, you fucking whatever. And I was like, oh my God, like I just like didn't know what was going on. And then I got really scared. I hid under a blanket because I was too scared to go towards the TV and turn it off. And then I was crying. And it was pretty traumatizing. I was scared of Chucky for a really long time, and now I'm a big fan.
Of course. Well, I mean, nothing beats trauma for a good story, you know?
True.
Well, when I was a kid, horror films were just not taboo in my household. Like, my mom wasn't a big horror fan, but she thought they were very amusing and scary. Yeah. And on top of that, my stepdad, who I was mentioning, who terrorized me with La Llorona and stuff, he was from Mexico, and he had a very bombastic personality, and he also enjoyed cervezas. And when he had enough cervezas, he did not want to get up. He just wanted to watch TV. He was a contractor. He worked very hard. And so the way I got exposed to horror movies at my youngest was I was sitting between them on the couch. I'm like 6, 5, I don't know exactly, but I'm like between them on the couch, and I'm like getting kind of tired. And my mom's like, we should put him to bed. And of course, Rick, my stepdad, he's just like, no, like, I don't want to get up. Like, he's fine. He's falling asleep. And she'd be like, but like, this is Saturday Nightmares. It's going to show really scary stuff. And he'd be like, he'll fall asleep. It's fine. I did not fall asleep. I would like sit there watching through my eyelids, Jason Voorhees killing people and stuff, and just getting scared as hell. And that was really the beginning. So whenever I think of horror movies, I think of, he'll fall asleep. It's fine. Don't even worry about it. And then I'm like, and then when I got a little older, he was like, I knew you weren't falling asleep. I just knew you liked this stuff. And I was like, maybe I do now. Fury response. But Chucky always got to me a lot because I had the original My Buddy doll that was based on. And I locked that son of a bitch in my closet at night because I was very nervous. I mean, I used to put a chair against the door and everything. I feel like, when I go to sleep, he's not my buddy anymore. He's going to be a problem.
Not.
So,
right.
Yeah, it was terrifying. And but a really bizarre quick side note about Child's Play. I hadn't seen the original in forever because I was really into the cheesier ones, the later ones, even 2 and 3, but especially like Bride of Chucky and beyond. Those were always the ones I'd revisit. So I sat down like 2 or 3 years ago and I was like, I gotta watch Child's Play, the original. So I'm watching it. And like the little boy makes his mom breakfast. And I was like, oh, this movie's very cozy to me because a lot of my time I was all alone with my mom. And it just kind of reminded me of being a kid because I would like make toast for her and stuff. And I was like, oh, I feel cozy. And then I'd be like, oh, and his mom's just this little white lady with blonde hair. My mom was a little white lady with blonde hair. Oh. And then it was like, oh man, she's going to her job at the mall. My mom had a job at the mall. Oh. And then somebody walks in and goes, Karen, can you work for me? And I was like, no, she does not have my mother's name too. This is ridiculous. I'm confused. How did I not realize?
That's amazing.
Like it was like a complete mirror to my actual life. Down to the friggin' name. She was named the same as my mother. So anyway.
That's iconic.
It's bizarre. But anyway, so I wanted to get to know you a little bit for myself and for the audience before we talk about our first scariest movie ever. And I challenged you to think of it because I do not consider myself a horror reviewer per se. I consider myself more of like a horror enthusiast. Yeah. That's just kind of that's a weird way of saying I'm a big old Pollyanna and I usually like everything. But so I wanted to hear what movies scared you because you love movies, you watch movies, you think about movies, you write and talk about movies. So it's like kindred spirits. Let's get scared together. So you told me, and I was surprised and thrilled that you picked a movie that was not even a decade old. Because a lot of horror fans lean into the old stuff a little too much for my taste. I mean, I love the old stuff. And obviously your love of giallo makes you a very unusual lover of really old stuff. And I love that. I think that's one of the coolest things on your channel. And I was like, wait, introduction to giallo? I'm listening.
I hope you learned a lot.
I actually did, even though I'm already a giallo fan.
Nice.
A lot of the giallo stuff I'm into, like my favorite giallo, I think it's a giallo, is The Psychic by Lucio Fulci.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet.
It's really good because the horror elements in it are so like knowing his work after that, you're like, holy shit, it's all there. Like the extreme sudden violence, the obsession with certain body parts being destroyed, stuff, it's all there. It was just subtle in The Psychic. it's really cool. I'm a massive Fulci fan. I could talk about Fulci for hours, but
Yes.
but anyway, so you brought up your one of your scariest movies ever was Hereditary.
Yes.
The 2018 film by Ari Aster, who has made a big splash with this movie and went on to do Midsummer and Beau is Afraid. And I was not a huge fan of Midsummer personally. What did you think of Midsummer?
No. I love Midsummer.
Really?
Yeah.
Is
But
it because it's one of
also-
those good for her movies? Good for her.
For sure, but also because I just think like Florence Pugh is a star, and
Oh, she's amazing.
like that was her first like big thing, and she kind of blew me away.
Oh, no, she's incredible. And I want to make it clear, very rarely when I don't love a movie, do I hate it.
Right.
Like probably the reason I talk so much about like what I thought of Midsummer is because I enjoyed so much of it. Because when I really like a movie, I get more critical of it because I think about it so much.
Yeah.
There was a lot to like, but my biggest problem was like in horror movies, I know like, you know, young white people are supposed to be dumb and love to be murdered, but these people really just love being murdered. the characters in it.
Yes.
And white people, I remember turning to my buddy Dave when we were watching, I was like, man, why do white people love cults that murder them so much? Like they're just so into it. I don't understand.
This is true.
But someday we'll go down that road. I have a lot of thoughts on Midsummer and I'd love to hear yours.
I would love to talk about it. Yeah.
We'll have to do that sometime because I do find that movie very scary without being super horror-y.
Yeah.
So, but right now we're talking all about Hereditary, which is, in my opinion, very horror-y. I intended to watch it right before this show by myself, but I ran out of work week time. I work for myself and I work all the friggin' time. So I forced it upon all of my friends on our Friday movie night. I was like, they're like, so what are we watching? And my buddy Dave was like, I brought a bunch of Blu-rays. I was like, well, Hereditary's first. And he was like, what? And I was like, we're watching it. And then he was like, why? And I was like, because I want to. And he was like, is this for work? And I was like, you shut up. So
They know.
So, but my buddy Dave also was not a big fan of Hereditary and liked it more watching it again.
Wow.
So, yeah, I liked it a lot more watching it again. So my first dig into this would be, what did you think? Or like, what made you afraid when you watch it? Because I know you said that there's some like, that it's kind of an odd reason you're afraid of it, maybe? Was that what you hinted at when we were texting about it?
Maybe? I don't remember.
Oh, that's fine.
I might have said it was like personal or something.
Sure.
Okay, so the reason I picked this is because it's the last film I saw in a theater that actually scared me.
Really?
I feel like I'm not really scared easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really is just like how dreadful the movie is. The sense of dread is like seeping from the minute it opens.
It's thick.
Yeah, it makes you feel disgusting. Like I'm just like I don't know. It's intense. And also I think like one of the scariest things about it is like generational trauma and like family issues and like parental issues. So for me, that's kind of why I was like, this is the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I'll warn you ahead of time. I should have told you this off mic, but I'm a horribly open book and a very vulnerable person. So you just have to say if you need boundaries, because I will talk about just about any goddamn thing about my life. So don't be afraid to be like, well, that's not what I'm going to talk about, because I will, I'll tell you all kinds of stuff. Like I have a very close relative. I don't want to say specifically, but I have a very close relative who is a paranoid schizophrenic.
Oh.
I don't recommend it. It's not
so
a good
sorry.
time. Thank you. Well, it's really hard because they hurt you and they don't even know it.
Right.
And at Toni Collette's character's worst in Hereditary, she reminds me so much of that relative. Even though what Toni Collette is seeing appears to be real to the audience.
Right.
Because with paranoid schizophrenics, even lies that they are aware are lies become the truth in their brain. So they're adamant about lies, even if they benefit themselves. Like, even if they made something up specifically so that they could be right in an argument, by the end of the argument, they didn't make it up in their own mind. It was always true. And it's impossible to argue with that, to go in circles of that. And the way she was acting, especially toward her son, like that whole scene where her son believed she was trying to like pull his head off when he was having that nightmare. The way she's like, I didn't do that. It's like, did you not do that, or did you do that? But now you don't. Now you didn't. Like, it scared the crap out of me. And that was actually the scariest thing the first time I watched it, when I didn't know how it was going to wrap up. I was like, is Toni Collette just absolutely and like desperately needs serious help because she's so crazy? And I'm not trying to use crazy in a derogatory way. Crazy, like, I feel terrible for her. Like, you can't be living a productive, happy life if you are that insane. Like, it's a very sad and scary thing. And I actually made a film called Ouija Room that came out a few years ago. And it was kind of loosely based on that. It was about a guy who has a sister. It's the only family he has. And she has autism and agoraphobia. But the problem is, when she freaks out, she hurts herself like really bad. She'll like bash herself in the head because she was told no and stuff like that. And the horror of the movie is realizing I can't take care of her. Like, this is beyond what I'm capable of. So do I give up on my loved one, or do I keep fighting? And to me, that's real horror. The horror of being an adult and making just decisions like that, and feeling like, you know, the adults in your life had no problem making hard decisions. But now here we are, we're all just, you know, two children under a trench coat, you know, like we never grew up, you know, we never grew up. And so that's something that's really scared me. The movie has all this dread, and it's all about loss. And what happens when you lose a loved one, when you lose a family member? You think about the family members that are still there. So they lose their grandma right at the beginning. And then all of a sudden it's like, now, you know, and then they lose their daughter. Spoilers are going to happen. The movie's a little older. And that's an incredibly unexpected moment.
Yeah.
Jeez. How did you react when the daughter died, when you saw it the first time?
That is one of the best scenes I think I've ever seen, like, in a horror movie.
Yeah.
And I'm not even trying to like kiss Ari Aster's ass or anything, but like, it's done so like effectively, because it's like, you really don't see it coming at all.
Yeah.
Even like when you watch it again, you're kind of like you're still like, oh shit. So, yeah, I really liked it. And also I think like just the way it's shot, and like how when she gets decapitated, the brother is just like in shock, and we're just on his face. And he just has the single tear, and then he drives away slowly.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and I love that he goes home and just goes to bed. 'Cause it's like, brain can't do this, so brain not going to, you know?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I think that's so true. Like, if you're not used to dealing with traumatic, violent things like that, then you can't. You know, it's not like he was a ex-Navy SEAL. He's just a 16-year-old kid. He was trying to smoke some weed and hopefully get a very disappointing hand job. And instead, you know, he loses his sister.
The whole thing was so fucked up. Oh, and then like, when like he wakes up in the morning
and he
like,
hears his mother start screaming.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like, I just love that we just hear the screaming for like a while until we see her later. Mm-hmm. It's so effective. Her screams, first of all, are like gut-wrenching. You know?
Yes. Yeah, Toni Collette owns that movie. I mean, she's so good in it. Unbelievably good. And talk about, I mean, the sequence, although we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the sequence where she says, like, I never wanted to be your mother to her son. I believed her.
Yeah.
And I mean that as a compliment, but also like, damn it. Ow. That hurt my feelings. The other thing, so speaking of the decapitation of the young girl, it's not done in a gorehound, like, hell yeah, brother kind of way. It subverts your expectations. As you're watching the movie, what if you're a big horror fan or not, you're sitting there thinking like, oh shit, she's gonna lose, she's gonna lose her head. And then you're like, well, we're not gonna see much because it's a child. So then Ari Aster's like, fuck you. So then the head gets lopped off, but then subverts your expectations even more, because after it's revealed that, the headless body's just sitting in the car, they smash cut to the head and it's already decayed massively.
Yes.
And that shot is as startling as anything.
For sure.
And it's just covered in flies and ants and
it's gross.
It's very desert, the speed of things that rot in the desert. The sun beats down and everything's hungry because everything's dead in the desert. It was shot in Utah. I don't know if you knew that. I was curious when I was watching it.
I didn't know that. Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
I would have assumed New Mexico or Arizona. So when it said Utah, I was like, well, that checks out. I mean, Halloween 4, 5, and 6 were shot in Utah. Silent Night, Deadly Night was shot in Utah.
Wow.
So yeah, Utah has a little film world there. So they shot it at the Park City Studios and surrounding areas.
Oh,
where they shot Hereditary. But I'm such a nerd for trivia facts on movies because I'm all about how the sausage is made. So so they're a family going through loss, and then they go through another horrible loss. And it's all because of normal things you do every day, in my opinion. Because the son wants to go to a party so he can smoke weed and be around a girl he likes and hang out with his friends or whatever. He's like 16 or 17, he's a kid. Right. And his mother wants him to take his sister because he lies and says it's a school function because he doesn't want his mom to say no. So she's like, take your sister. But the reason she wants him to take her sister is she's special needs. She has emotional issues and psychological issues. So she's like, take your sister. And he's like, I don't want, like, does she want to go? And she's like, just take your sister, because she doesn't want to deal with his sister. She wants a break herself. So both of them are being very selfish, but in ways we all do all the time that are no harm. And it ends up being the most possible harm.
Yes. It really shows the human experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the way any traumatic incident is in life, is you're just living and then it happens.
Yeah.
I like to this day, again, like I said, open book, but so my, like, not trying to trauma dump, but my best friend committed suicide about 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. No, it sucked. It was awful, but I still remember where I was when I got the phone call. It was a Saturday night. I was sitting on the couch with my then girlfriend, and we were watching old wrestling videos from the 90s. And I had just bought a pack of black cherry flavored soda, like a limited edition soda pop. And I was excited because I was like cracking open. I was like, let's have some of this soda. Because we were both like friggin' nerds, and we're like, about your age, actually, at that time. And we just wanted to enjoy some fun soda and watch silly, stupid wrestling. And then I got a phone call that made me collapse on the ground. That's life.
Right.
It is. That's how it goes. And I'm saying this only because it's the example I have of, I was having a perfectly good Saturday night like any other Saturday night. And all I had on my mind was black cherry soda pop. And then, an hour and a half later, I'm in a room with all of my friends and we're all crying together. Because you don't, life is like, life is what happens when you're making other plans, like,
right. It's very unexpected.
Exactly. And I just, that's the thing that I keep thinking about in this movie that drives me insane is he wanted to go to a party. His mom made him bring his sister along. Oh, what a pain in the butt it is, but whatever, it'll work out okay. I don't hate my sister, but I'd really rather not have her around. And then it's like, anyway, an hour and a half later, she has no head.
Yeah. There's also so much like guilt in this movie from like almost every character.
Yes.
Like, because the son is definitely struggling with so much guilt because first of all, he's the one at the party was like, oh, Charlie, go eat the chocolate cake.
Yes.
And that's the cake that had nuts in it, and she has an allergy. Obviously, he didn't know that, but like, there's that, and then the mom also is feeling a lot of guilt because she kept pushing that she goes with him to the party. So, yeah.
Well, and her mother died and they had a fractured relationship.
Yeah.
So she felt like she didn't do enough for her mom. All she really did was ship her off.
Right.
And that's a massive guilt bomb too. That's the whole movie starts with guilt. Because the worst part is before her daughter even dies, she's at like a place trying to deal with loss. Like she's at a support group for people who've had loved ones die before her daughter's gone. Like that's,
yeah.
And you know who I feel bad for in the movie upon a second viewing that I'd never really thought about at all is the dad.
Yeah.
Because he actually, well, first of all, he's like a traditional matriarch. Or patriarch, rather. Sorry, patriarch. Mm-hmm. He's a stoic man because that's what everyone around him needs. And in our society and in most societies, men are pushed to be stoic because most communities need that. They need like, oh my God, the house is on fire, for somebody to be like, that isn't good. Let's leave out the front door right now. I don't get the privilege of screaming and crying. I have to get you all out. And I think that that's something that people don't really think about a lot. But this poor guy, all he tries to do is keep the family together and keep them happy through this. And he can't. And sometimes it's so heartbreaking when he's just trying to talk to Toni Collette. And he's just trying to be the anchor to reality, which just frustrates her. And I can't blame her for feeling frustrated. Like, he doesn't take what she's saying super duper serious because from his perspective, he's just trying to get the mortgage paid. He's just trying to keep them in a house so that they have the time to work through their problems. Mm-hmm. So I felt awful for him. Really, really awful for him. And I couldn't believe how powerful it was that he like almost never got to be emotional. Actually made me really emotional.
Right. Yeah, the whole thing is really, really rough. Like, I think the dinner scene, like how he was trying to like get them to stop arguing, was really like, he was so calm throughout it. They're saying like the worst things to each other.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like, all right, I think that's good. I think we're done now. We're done right now.
Yeah. And it's like, no. If mom wants to say something to me, say it. And then, it just, and I don't blame the son for that either, because he feels like a total piece of shit. And he kind of wants his mom to be like, you're a piece of shit, so that he can cry it out. And then hopefully they can, repair from there. Mm-hmm. But it just gets worse and worse and worse because, of course, she apparently has a massive amount of resentment for her son. Which is really rough because, like, I was not a planned baby.
Me neither. I'm glad we can talk about that.
All right. High five.
I really related to that, actually, which is why I was saying that the movie is a little personal for me.
Sure. Well, because like my mother had me in her early 30s. Mm-hmm. So I was her second child, but I was 9 or 10 years apart from my older sister. Like I was and with a different man, with a different father. So my mom meets a guy, is attracted to him, and they start hanging out, and she gets pregnant. And now it's like, we got to have a kid. And this dude's like a biker and like really rough around the edges. My mother at that point was a very prim and proper. She had a corporate job. She was trying to get out of the life she'd been in because she came from rural poverty. So, and rural poverty is just a nightmare. Like when she tells me stories of how she grew up, it sounds like she grew up in Somalia compared to the way life is in America now. But if my mother, and I say this with love, and I pray she's not listening to this, but when my mother, not because I have anything bad to say, I love my mother's my hero. My mother taught me that if you don't like something, you can fix it, you can change it, you can kick everybody's ass until you're happy. That's my mother. My mother is a superhero. But if my mom had a little wine, I was an accident. But if my mom is stone sober. No. What are you talking about? Like, no. I wanted to have a little boy. I wanted to have you. And I feel bad for my mom because I want her to be able to I'm not offended by the fact that I was a whoopsie daisy because I love my mother. And she loves me, and I have no doubt that she loves me and stuff like that. And my dad was a nightmare. So that didn't last long. My mom pieced out before I was 1 year old. So, and that's the hard thing with parents, is that dichotomy. And I do feel like my mom blames herself for giving me a dad that sucked. And it's like, yeah, you gave me a dad that sucked, but you didn't know he was going to suck. And you gave me the best mom ever. I don't want anyone else to have raised me. So anyway, see, it's getting really intensely personal, but that's why this movie's scary, kids.
It's so true, though. It's so true.
And I think that my audience on Weekly Spooky will dig this because they listen to literature, on over the air. Mm-hmm. So I think they're heady. I think they're a heady bunch. But as much as you want to share, like what kind of made you identify with it? Your experience being an oopsie baby.
So my mom and I actually do not have a good relationship.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. When I could, I cut her out of my life, just like no contact kind of thing.
Of course.
So kind of almost immediately, I guess I related to Toni Collette in that way of like having this very complicated relationship with her mom. Also, like a thing that my mom used to say was always like, and she wouldn't even like be drunk. She would just be like, she'd be like, oh, well, I wasn't supposed to have you. You were a mistake. Like, you were an accident. And like, she would kind of say it like that. And then like hours later, after realizing like, oh, that's like a really shitty thing to say, she'd be like, oh, but I love you. And like, I don't regret it. And it's like, well, if you didn't, why do you bring it up all the time like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And her and my dad, they didn't work out. They're both a mess, but yeah, but yeah.
And,
so
imagine
there's a
that,
lot to
and then you
relate
went
to.
into show business. Oh, sorry, I interrupted. I was gonna say, imagine that because you went into show business. Say, I get it completely.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my god.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, I feel like psychology is such a massive element of horror. So I really appreciate you being this candid because most of your content's pretty light and fun, and I love it.
Yeah.
But I had no doubt that there was a brain in your head, like because people who like to have fun and like to laugh, they think a lot. That's why you know what you think, what you find funny, and that's what what you find charming and enjoyable. So I'm so sorry to hear that because I want to make it clear when my mom has a little bit of wine, I just mean that she gets real chill and then goes like, yeah, I wasn't thinking of doing that, but like turned out great. So, that's my mom never said like, I didn't want to have you. But it was always just kind of a, if she's sober, she's like, no, wanted you 110%. And then if she's a little loopy, she'd be like, oh, like it was just a little slip up, but life is like that. You never know when the good things are coming, So she's never been a jerk to me. She's always been, I'm very fortunate because my dad is just, he disowned me and good riddance to bad rubbish. I mean, sometimes the trash takes itself out.
Yes.
So, but that being said, I know because my family member I mentioned who had paranoid schizophrenia, I had to do the like, no more contact. This is it after years of trying to help.
Yeah.
And that hurt me so much. So I really get it though, how hard it would be, even if you're like, well, it's obvious I shouldn't deal with my mom anymore. It still was a horrible decision to come to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I think also like another thing I relate to a lot with Toni Collette is just like that feeling of guilt all the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like maybe this is all my fault and like whatever. So yeah, because it's a really hard decision, especially if it's your parent. You know what I mean? It's like,
oh, yeah.
Okay. But I had to, and it's like, I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
It's coming up 2 years almost.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. But I feel a lot better and like, I don't know. It's really rough when like
Sure.
they're incredibly like abusive and they don't think they are. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing. They just like don't think that they are abusive. Very narcissistic and like
Mhm.
just
One
it's
thing
not
people
good.
one thing I wish people would talk about more is abusive people. Like, you're not to them, you're not their victim, you're their drug. They
Mhm.
need to keep abusing you. It's
Right.
really important to them, and all they see it as is a desire, and it's easy to mistake that desire for love. It's easy to mistake that desire for compassion and care, but in reality, you just need another fix of arguing and fighting and putting them down and whatever it is that you do. And I feel like I wish people talked about that element of abuse a lot more, because I see it every time I see anybody being abusive. It's like they need you so bad. They desperately
Right.
need you in their from their subconscious. You're their fix. It
Right.
actually is an attack on them that you want to get away.
Oh,
You're
that's very
trying to
true.
hurt them.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially narcissistic people.
Oh yeah.
That's like yeah. Once they like lose that, for a while she was trying everything in her power to like get in contact with me, like all kinds of things, and I just like was like, oh, and it's gonna happen, so I'm in
Yeah.
control of my own life.
Ugh.
so
So you mentioned that you identified with Toni Collette's character very much.
yeah.
How did you feel when it got turned on its head and then it turned out she was also being a very difficult mother, or becoming a very difficult mother like her mother in the movie? What did that make you feel?
That just felt very sad.
Mhm.
Just that I can't relate to personally, but I do feel like that is a thing that does happen to people that have been, abused by parents, or, have some childhood trauma and whatnot. It's very easy to fall into this cycle and not break the cycle. So it's really hard to watch.
Sure. Well, and Toni
Yeah.
Collette's character, she's wound so tight to be a better mom than her mom that she's actually
sure.
a really difficult mom.
Yeah, that's what makes it worse,
Yeah.
It's sad.
This is a film that really it drags you through the dirt by your hair, and every now and then it stops just long enough to kick you in the ribs before it starts pulling you some more.
Yeah.
Maybe it lets you take a drag out of a water bottle too. It's like, here's a little bit more water, and then you're like, oh thanks. It's like, oh, I just want you to live through this, and you're like, oh man,
Right.
like I just want you to suffer all the way through.
It's wild. Like, what a hell of a first feature film.
Yeah. Well, and if you watched, did you see Beau is Afraid?
I did.
Ari Aster has mom issues that I can't even begin to comprehend.
He does. He does.
For
I
sure.
relate.
And
I think that's
bet.
why I like him a lot.
I could see that. I could totally see that. And yeah, I really can. And man, Hereditary, that's the thing. And I'm so glad you picked this, because it was exactly, you unintentionally did what I hoped, which was you surprised me. And because like, if the next scariest movie you pick is like one with really good jump scares, I'm not going to be disappointed, because that's scary too. It's just, existential dread is scary, and then cats jumping out when you're not expecting it is scary. It's
Right.
all valid. It's all that same lizard brain reaction.
Mhm.
It's just on a spectrum, I suppose. And that's the other thing. So speaking of Ari Aster's problems with moms, the fact that the movie turns out to all be focused on the little boy, but the son,
Mhm.
that says a lot about why the title is Hereditary.
Right.
Because it's like, oh, all the women around you are just here to put you in this really fucked up position. That's what they all exist for. Every female influence is just so that you wind up in the very, very insane ending.
Yeah.
And I don't know, obviously I don't agree with the point I feel like it was making about that, but I can respect the artistry of how it says it. And I don't think it's harmful or anything. It's just like, to me, women always lifted me up as a little boy. Like women were always the people who were like the badasses that really made stuff happen. And a lot of times the men were kind of transient to me. I've always had trouble connecting with men as opposed to women.
Same.
Yeah.
Yes,
but reversed or exactly the same?
No, like I have a really hard time connecting with men. Just like I don't know. I also have daddy issues, so it's all across the board for me.
Oh man, are you just checking every box you can?
Yes. Wait till you start hearing about my mental illness.
Oh goodness, only one? Well then, I got you beat if it's just one. Give me a break. What is this, amateur hour? Come on.
We'll get there.
Oh yeah. Well, and actually, mental illness is that's a really good segue, because the movie kind of, I won't say it gaslights us, the audience, but the movie gaslights the characters in a way. The first time I watched this movie, all I kept thinking was, is everybody insane in the same way because they're related? Or is something actually happening? Like, and that was the scariest part for me, was that I was like, crap, is this just welcome to your inheritance? You're a wackadoo. You're going to have a really hard life and it's not even your fault. Or is it, something deeper? And again, spoilers in case this is a deep dive, kids. The ending where it turns out there is a cult following them around. That's what made me not like the movie that much the first time I watched it. Not because it was bad, but because me personally, I would have found, if it had been just in his brain, I would have been way terrified of that. That would have been the scarier ending for me personally. Doesn't mean the ending's not good. And I actually liked it a lot more a second viewing, even though I knew it was coming, which is not normal for me. But yeah, when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, okay, actually, it is still terrifying, because the other side is like, what if you're positive you're insane? But no. People are actually just following you everywhere because they want something from you, something you could never imagine. Something H.P. Lovecraft couldn't imagine is your fate.
This is all the grandmother's fault. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah. No, Gam fucked the family over hard, man.
Girly Pop was on some shit, I fear.
Yeah. No, really, like, although I'm envious, that he got from his grandmother inheriting being, basically a god to a cult. And all my grandmother that died, all she left me was like some racist memories.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Try being the only Hispanic person in your entire family that's around you, and half the family doesn't care. It's totally okay. No, it's not even a thing. They're just like, whatever. And then a few actors just kind of, you're not the favorite because your name has a Q in it and shit. Like, what's wrong with you? And I don't even think it was intentional. I think it was subconscious. I think it was just like, this little brown haired thing is looking at me again. But no, so but with me, like, my mental illnesses are mostly depression and I have severe anxiety. Like, it's stupid how bad my anxiety is. Whenever people ask me, like, how do you run your company as, mostly by yourself? I always say, well, hard work and an under-medicated anxiety disorder. It really keeps you on the details. If I get a text message at 6:30 in the morning that, like, the podcast feed hasn't updated, I hop out of bed and run to my desk and fix it. And if I'm lucky, I can go back to sleep for another hour. That's just who I am. I can't help it. And I have beautiful imposter syndrome because I'm successful in a field that I was always told was impossible. And not just by mean people, by like people who were trying to help by being realistic. They were like, there's no way you're going to work in film for a living, not in Ohio. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to try anyway. So I'll also have those moments where I'm like, well, I better work every minute of every day. I'm on borrowed time. This shouldn't have even happened.
Oh, no.
Sorry. So you ever laugh at something just because of the sheer honesty of it? Like that's why I'm laughing. I'm like, wow, I didn't even process that through my head. I just vomited that out, like, but so yeah, with me, the thing that fed my anxiety disorder in Hereditary was the fact that the idea that you can't trust your mother, the idea that like your mother hates you now, the idea that Toni Collette was like, you're smirking at me all the time. You're doing this. Right. I resent you to her son. I was like, oh yeah. Paranoia is like, if anxiety is cocaine, paranoia is fentanyl. So it really makes you crazy, but it's not, they're alike. Being paranoid and being constantly anxious and nervous is similar. It's just one is hopefully less harmful to yourself and the people around you. So that was where I kind of identified. If you want to share your baggage, I would love to stop talking for a second. Goodness gracious, my audience is getting to know me so well.
What were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about how like my personal mental illness made me feel for the characters.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I also have like really bad anxiety. I think it's very obvious the more someone talks to me. I think like the minute you meet me, you're like, oh.
God, that is so. I did not think when you came up on this.
I think I'm good at masking, but I do have a lot of anxiety.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of depression too. Just like there was a lot like I think specifically like the dinner scene in the movie was like the most anxiety I ever felt, just because I was like, oh no, like I think I relate to this too much. Like,
yeah. Well, there's that moment where you're like, I totally get this. Ah, shit, what does that say about me?
Yeah, like when she's yelling at him and she's like, and all I get is that fucking face on your face. And I'm like, been there. Been there.
That line was perfect because that face on your face is not good writing, except it's great writing.
Exactly. Because
it's true. It's from a true place.
It is. Yeah.
Man, way to pick the most abusive possible movie. I love it. You're in my good group right now, and I'm not being funny. Like no, because it's woof. No, because usually I'm the one that people are like, why do you pick the saddest things? Or why do you pick the weirdest things? Like I do my buddy's podcast, This Week in Geek. I pop on there every now and then. Mm-hmm. And what they do is this thing that's like, it simulates like being 3 video store clerks. And you just pick, older movies and we all talk about them. Everybody brings a movie to it. And every time I bring something that they've never heard of or that's really sad. Usually never heard of, like it'll be like, oh, we're gonna do 976 Evil and we're gonna do this other horror movie, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing Assault of the Party Nerds. They're like, I've never heard of that. I'm like, I'll send you a copy because it's out of print, but we're all watching it. And they're like, oh man. I'm like, don't ever give me choices. So I'm the wild card, but in ways nobody expects half the time. So but I also want to say, you made a really good point when it comes to anxiety. Like you feel like the reason you're funny and charming is because you're just good at masking it.
Yeah.
And I don't steal your shine. The reason you're funny and charming is because you're funny and charming. It's not because you're hiding your anxiety. It's because that's the person you actually would like to be. And that's the person you are when the anxiety's not at the forefront. So it's okay. I do the same thing. I'll put myself down. I'll be like, yeah, I do okay at times. And it's like, why am I doing that to myself? Like I have humble brag, but like I have success beyond my wildest dreams. And I still don't, granted my dreams are very realistic, but I'll still like do that to myself. One of the reasons, and maybe this affects you, I don't know your entire like creative history, but I didn't want to go on medication because I believed that it would make me less creative.
I feel like I've heard a lot of people say that, like, they're nervous about that.
And that comes from believing that what you have, the skill you have, the specialness inside you is so freaking delicate that if you change anything about yourself, even for the better, it's just going to vaporize.
Right.
As if we're not a sum total of all of our experiences, and a little Zoloft won't hurt. Yeah. And I can say this with anger and gusto because I'm talking to me. Like, I'm not even talking to another person. That's
Listen,
just me.
I'm on Wellbutrin. I'm right there with you.
That made my tummy feel weird, so I had to try something else.
Oh no, that sucks.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, but it was enough that I was like, I'm gonna something else, please. So, but and good on you for taking your care into your own hands, because it's important. It matters.
Thank you.
It does. that you wake up every day and can first tolerate and then like your life is really important. And that's why we watch horror movies. We want to feel these dark things. As twisted as it is, we want to feel these things. We want them to be in our minds.
Yes.
We're weird. And I love that. I love that moniker. I am a weird person. I'm an unusual duder, and if somebody were to say you're weird, I'd be like, yes, but you forgot handsome. It's a list.
I always say that horror movies for me, they're a way I can experience like my deep feelings and my deepest fears in a safe space.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Do you when you watch horror movies, do you like to challenge yourself? Do you like to watch stuff that is going to fuck you up?
I do.
See, and I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I will watch something just like, first of all, I don't believe in hype when it comes to like things that are disturbing. So
same.
A good example is Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh, I hate that movie.
See, I love that movie because it's phenomenal storytelling. It's a well-made film, not because all the shock stuff and all the like banned in 31 countries, that's all hype.
Yeah.
But when people say like it's a rite of passage movie, I'm like, no, it's just a really good movie of that era. It has a lot to say about the media. It has a lot to say about art. It has a lot to say about white people and white savior complexes. It has all of that going on. And Ruggero Deodato, when he made that film, he had just gotten out of a television job and he hated television because he felt like everything you do is propaganda, even if you try not to. And that's why he made that movie. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, that was the message I got from the film.
Wow.
Was that, that you can't help it. So, but I think that movie is often maligned as like a Faces of Death, or although Faces of Death is not that bad, but like the sequels, which were just like compilations of death footage. It's not that. It's a story. It's a part of its history. I abhor the animal killings. They make me very uncomfortable, but they are there to do that. In the era that it was made, the animal killings, which were real, were meant to establish authenticity and make your stomach turn a little bit. We're very different 40 years later. Now it is absolutely traumatizing because we're so far from the farm now, we're so far from meat now that seeing any animal die, even if we eat Big Macs every day, is very unpleasant.
Yes.
So, and I should do, cause you did like introduction to giallo. I should do an introduction to cannibal movies. I've studied everything about like how they happened and why and stuff. But anyway.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I would watch that actually.
It's a fascinating topic. Italian cinema is fascinating because you owe all of your favorite Italian movies to Mussolini. If he had never been the dictator of Italy, you wouldn't have all the movies you like. So, but I'll leave that out because I like the tangents we're going on, as long as I don't go on. Like, if I go on emotional tangents, it's good. If I go on nerd tangents too long, we're just not on topic anymore.
Right.
But so, but no, so my point is that, yeah, I love a movie that challenges me. And I actually showed a friend Cannibal Holocaust recently, and I said, like, watch it for a film, telling a story. And at the end of it, she was like, why did I love that? And I was like, yeah, why did you love that? And she's like, well, the animals dying was disgusting. I was like, yes, it was. And they were not good people doing that either. Like,
right.
yeah, the turtle is the one, you know, because they like mutilate the turtle. And and honestly, it made me a little less sick because I grew up and we would catch snapping turtles and eat them. So it was still stomach churning, but I was also like, I know what's inside a turtle shell because we've done that.
Mm-hmm.
What was disturbing to me was the lack of respect that they had for the turtle. But those people weren't heroes. That movie, the reason they did that was that those people were pieces of shit. And it was like, here's these pieces of shit. On camera, they're like, we love nature and we respect it and we appreciate being able to eat this turtle. And then when they don't think they're being filmed, they're like, ha ha, look at the dumb turtle. I'm cutting it up into bits because it's funny.
Right.
Those people. So anyway, I know, Digression City, USA. So, no, but I love hearing that you like to challenge yourself because I think that if you have the stomach for it, it's a really important thing. It makes you a wiser and more empathetic person.
I agree
I chose to say empathetic instead of stronger because I don't think it's about strength. I think empathy is strength. If you can empathize with something, that means you're understanding it. If you're understanding something, then it's not hard to bear like it was. Most of the time. Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes you empathize so much you're like, I can't believe the amount of pain you're going through because I know it. So, oh my God, I think I might just die too. I might just go lay down and die.
Right.
You know, that's the all the way side of it. But so to kind of bring it somewhat to a close, are there any takes in Hereditary that you've always thought that you don't know if they were intentional or not?
Any takes?
Like about why things happen the way they do. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, upon a second viewing, Toni Collette making houses, like, and making dioramas, like perfect models as her job as an artist, told me that what she really wants is to build things perfectly. And that's why she is kind of a hard mom, because she doesn't see things as they are. She sees them as they should be.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense, especially like when the dad walks in and he sees her like recreating the accident. Yeah. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, imagine how Peter is going to feel like when he sees this. And she's like, what do you mean? This is not about him. This is just how the accident looked.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
And to me, that was a massive thing about her because she had always done things. She had always seen things through an artistic gaze, and now she was seeing them just dead ass real. Like she went from escaping to being inescapable. You know, she has to make a diorama of her daughter's death. Why? Because she has to. It's just what she does. And it's not for anybody else to see, but people are going to see. Like,
yeah.
And that was a take I didn't have before, was that Toni Collette's art is a lot about her damage. You know, I feel like she understands things by building them. So
that's a really good, no, I'm glad you said that. That's a good way to look at that. Never thought of it like that.
I try to think about, again, it's with empathy. Like I try to think about, like, I create lots of art from pain, and I'm not subtle. Like I have no subtlety in me. I mean, I know by the way I dress and everything, you would assume like this is a very subtle young man, but but no, I'm not. And so subtlety is not my strength, but I love subtlety when others do it. I think subtlety is fascinating, and I love the idea that I can sit and poke and prod and needle at Hereditary at like one scene I liked for as long as I want. It's just a treat for me. I can do that. And I don't mean that to sound conceited or whatever. I do this about Terminator 2. I love Terminator 2. It's one of my favorite movies since I was a child. And I'll sit and think about certain scenes and be like, I think this scene meant this. And I'll think about it for hours, you know, or days or my whole life. And like to this day, I'm like, you know why I love Terminator 2? I think it's because it's a woman trying to protect her son because she believes he's the future. So it's about every mother. But yeah, so I just was wondering if there was anything you picked up on that that kind of affected you like that. Another one I had thought about was the son. He, even though he likes that girl, he hates when she looks at him.
Oh.
Like when like if he spots her looking at him and looking away, it like feeds his fear that maybe women, or at least anybody, is just always watching him when he doesn't know. And he doesn't like that. He can stare at her all day long. But the moment that he catches her turning her head away, he doesn't think, yeah, she digs me. He thinks, what does she want? Because that's the reality he actually lives in. He doesn't even realize it.
Right. I guess that upon this rewatch, one thing that I noticed that I guess I didn't pick up on before is at the beginning, Charlie is talking to her mom and basically says that, like, oh, like, grandma wanted me to be a boy.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like, it seems like Peter is almost like the forgotten child. Like, nobody cares. And I feel like that even shows at the end, because it's like, they just wanted Charlie just in a male body.
Yeah. No, it totally, he's like a consolation prize.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he always felt that way. He didn't even realize it.
That's the worst part.
Yeah, no, and it is. And then it turns out that like he's been so afraid of living life for other people, you know, of like having to do what his mom says, having to do, you know, what anybody says. You know, he has that the defiant streak, and the end of the movie is absolute compliance.
Yeah.
It's a complete and utter nightmare. And wow, my blood just got hot. Like I just felt my arm get warm because it's so good and so intense, and it's probably well thought out, but who knows? I don't know if you believe this. I'm a believer that the writer's intent doesn't and director's intent doesn't really matter once the movie's out. Then it's up to us.
Right.
Once art's with people. So one last question I want to run you through before we wrap up this episode. Very happy with how it's going. I love that we're talking deep and heavy, because I think that that's important. And I think that horror movies, thank goodness, they're getting a little bit more respect and dignity than they used to.
I agree.
But then, and this actually is a perfect segue I didn't even intend, but then you have movies like Hereditary, which was one of the first films to cause the elevated horror movement.
Right.
It was the Witch, and this, and maybe a couple other ones I'm forgetting at this exact moment.
The Babadook as well.
Yes, the Babadook is a good example.
Yeah.
And I love the Babadook, by the way.
Yeah.
I find that movie terrifying.
I almost picked that one for this.
Yeah?
It was between those two. Remember I was telling you that like I was struggling? Yeah. It was between those two.
Well, there's always the next time, because like Babadook is a great film. I just rewatched it because it was on Joe Bob's Last Drive-In recently.
Oh, nice.
And I enjoyed his commentary because he loves that movie. And had a lot of cool takes on it. But that's another one, that mental illness horror. That's a really good one. No more thinking about Babadook. Oh, so with this elevated horror concept, speaking of Joe Bob said, when asked, what do you think of elevated horror? He said, I think that people who say elevated horror are people who don't like horror movies. And that's what they want to they use to describe the horror movies they do like. Like, cause they don't want to be horror fans. They don't want to say that they don't want to be in the same camp as the guy who is like, yeah, I'm just hanging out here watching Sleepaway Camp 2 for the 18th time. You know, there's a lot of tits and blood in there, you know, and it's like, no, I'm more into the horrors of the human experience. It's like, oh yeah, brother, I saw Hereditary in the theater like 6 times. And it's like, but I'm not you. You know, like there's a little bit of snobbery, not in everybody, but I feel like it's kind of like a horror movie. The moment it's up for an Oscar, it becomes a thriller. Magically. It just becomes a thriller.
Very true. Black Swan.
Yeah. And it's like, what is the difference between a horror movie and a thriller? I really don't know. There really isn't. I guess a horror movie is a little bit more horrific, but not really. A thriller and a horror movie, they're just the same thing. It's meant to elicit scare and suspense and fear. The best place to watch independent horror, if you want to see like well-funded independent horror right now, is the Lifetime channel. Most of they have all of the trashy, crazy, wild thrillers are on Lifetime.
I haven't watched Lifetime in many, many years.
Oh, dude. They started doing this new thing where at the beginning of the Christmas season, they do Christmas thrillers instead of just straight Christmas movies at the start.
That's amazing.
Oh my God, they're so good. I mean, they're not good, but they're so good.
Oh, I have to watch them. Oh my God. No, actually, to go off on a small tangent.
Please.
So I went to acting school. I went to a conservatory for 2 years. And when I first got into the school, one of my teachers was like, okay, so what's something you really want to do in acting? And I used to be a big Lifetime girly. And I was like, I need to be the crazy bitch in a Lifetime movie that throws the other girl down the stairs. I need to be in one of these movies. And to that teacher, I remained the Lifetime girl. But I used to love Lifetime, so that just made me think of that.
Oh no! When I am a big cigar smoker, and when I hang out at the cigar lounge, they have flat screen TVs everywhere. You can watch whatever you want. And if you get there when nobody's really there, like a self-employed person going there at 1 p.m. when nobody is really shopping, I immediately turn the TVs to Lifetime, and people are always like, "Who put this on Lifetime?" when they come in to smoke their cigar, and I'm like, "Me." And this one's really good. I need to find out if she's gonna stick with him or not because I think he's bad news.
Oh, that's great.
I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I only believe in pleasures. So
I agree with that, actually.
But it really is an incredible thing. Off the air, I'll talk to you about if you're like me, because you're a younger millennial, I'm an elder millennial. Yeah. If you're like me, you probably don't have cable. I'll tell you how I get them. Not illegally, but it's just why would I plug a service that doesn't plug me?
Awesome. That's good. That's also why I stopped watching, because I don't have cable.
Exactly. Because who does? I mean, I'm 37. I had cable for 1 year when they did the thing where it was it's $10 more for all the cable channels in my internet for the first year. And they were like, yeah. And then I only watched it Christmas time for Hallmark. And then, and then when it was time to re-up, I was like, oh no, cancel it, please. It's not working for me. So to wrap it up, the ending where it turns out that he is basically a manifestation, or has become the manifestation of a god, of a demon of sorts. Paimon, which I apparently is in the Bible or is biblical in some way.
I've heard that, yeah.
But I didn't do any research ahead of time because my dog is really cute and I wanted to pet it. Just didn't have time. But what did you think the first time you watched it when it was revealed that there really was this cult and that his grandma had kind of started the dominoes of him becoming the Paimon for all these people? What went through your head?
I was very confused. When I first watched it, I don't know why I just didn't see it going in this direction. I was just oh, okay, they're really here. All these old naked people are really here. We're praising Paimon. Okay. Yeah, I mean, now I like it more just because I think it's so dark and so icky that this grandmother had this plan for her grandchildren and her daughter for years, and it's it's just gross. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have too much deep thoughts on it.
Oh, that's
I also
okay. Well,
didn't really know what Paimon was, so I had to look it up after.
Oh yeah, no, I did too. And actually, I actually found out that it was a real thing because I have a buddy who's one of that rare breed that he's a very devout Christian and a big lover of horror movies. So he was I found it really interesting that I never see any movies talk about Paimon. Or Paimon, or however you say it. He was I thought that was really interesting. I was huh, you always bring me something I don't know, because yeah.
Interesting.
It is. It super is. And it's okay to not have a million theories and stuff. You're figuring out what I like to talk about movies on this. We're really folks, we're really sniffing each other out. That's what this really is. We're just trying to make sure that that we can talk about movies together without hating each other.
That would be nice.
It would be. But no, for me, it was like, the more I think about it, the more I think, I mean, first of all, I was disturbed and then a little bummed out that it was actually supernatural. But that's just me.
Right.
But again, that was my personal opinion because I wanted it to be real so it would scare me more.
I get that.
But now when I look at it, it all started with the grandma dying. So the grandma was not willing to have her head cut off and be murdered. To summon Paimon. She was like, no, we're planning this, and then when I die, y'all dig up my body and cut off my head and then start the ritual, which means that she's like, all right, well, I'm not feeling too good. Good luck, women in my family. And then she dies.
Yeah.
So she sets her family up to be, and I can't say, because we don't meet her ever. I can't say that it's a hateful thing. She may think that it's good for them, that like it's a privilege for them to be the sacrifices that bring Paimon back.
She probably does. I feel like most of the cult people think it's a good thing.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they would,
Like, we're doing this for a greater power.
Yes. And they wanted Charlie to be the boy that got it. But Charlie did the disservice of being born a woman. How rude. Very rude.
Right.
But so that's the other thing. I do think that the more I think about it, the more Hereditary is such a good name for this movie. Because it's all about the bullshit that got passed down to you that had nothing to do with you.
Correct. Generational trauma.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. and you know, my family's, you know, kind of, there's not an assload of generational trauma, thank goodness. But, you know, my family came here, my father's side came here from Portugal in the 1950s, I believe it was, or the end of the 40s. And came from like terrifying poverty. My family was from little tiny villages, you know, where the median income today is like 15 grand. Like they're insanely poor.
Right.
And my grandpa joined the Navy. He killed some folks because it was during Vietnam, and the Navy actually fought in Vietnam, like with guns, because of the riverboats, which I didn't know until I thought about it and went, oh shit, there are a lot of rivers in Vietnam. And my grandpa basically killed to get my family established in this country so that we could have a better life. I mean, he fought and killed so that we could be accepted, which is insane. My family also, and maybe you dig this, maybe you don't, because you're from Brooklyn, right?
I'm from Queens originally. But
Queens? Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Queens! I'll never say that again.
No, it's fine. I live in Brooklyn.
No. But so you're from Queens. So I'm from Dayton, Ohio, which is the Paris of Ohio. Oh. Yes. But that's just the thing I say. But there aren't a lot of Hispanics here.
Right.
There are a lot now, but there were not in 86, 87, 88 when I was growing up, because born in 86. There weren't a lot of Hispanics here. And my father's side of the family anglicized heavily because that was what you did. So like all of the, I almost started naming my father and his siblings. That's not wise. As if you can't find them with my unusual as hell last name. But they're all, you know, Marks and Stacy's and stuff. That's their first names.
Oh, okay.
And that, because it was like, that was the era. The era was you join in and kind of homogenize with everybody. And that's supposed to be a good thing. I'm named after my grandfather. He was Enrique. I'm Enrique, you know. He went by Rick. His whole life he went by Rick. That's just who he is, you know. He went by Rick. I actually insisted on going by my name, but because I grew up in the Midwest, I was called Henrik because it was just a reading of my name in English, which is not, I don't consider hateful. It just is what it is. And actually, I only started using the pronunciation Enrique recently because one day I realized, oh my God, when I'm at McDonald's, I have to explain to the lady to not say Enrique because Hispanic culture is so established in our country now. Why am I now correcting people to not say Henrique or Enrique or how, you know, like, why am I correcting them to say Henrik now? Most of them say Henrique, and then I correct them to the but it's just a part of getting older, and kind of seeing how our culture's changing. And I know you have Celise, which I'm people had a field day saying.
Yes. Lots of different pronunciations. Celis, Celis, Celeste. That's a completely different name, but okay. All kinds of
Heinrich, Hendrik, Henriks.
Oh boy.
Those were the ones
Way off.
that. Oh, and then people are like, can I call you Hank? And I'd be like, can I call you asshole? Like, no, you can't call me Hank. That's not my name.
Who are you to say that I'm going to be called Hank now?
Yeah. Well, and I grew up with a nickname. Everybody called me Ricky and they had, so this is where it got tricky. My stepfather, who's from Mexico, who is the other reason I grew up with such a Hispanic life, because I could pass, they could be like, oh, this is Ricky. And it'd be like, oh, that's a little white boy. But my stepdad was Enrique Ortiz, and he was a dark-skinned Mexican man. And so people knew that there was something south of the border about these people,
Right.
But he was Enrique as well with no H. So he was Rick and I was Little Rick.
Aww.
Or Little Ricky, to separate us. And I hated being called Little Rick because I was like, he's not my dad. I was like, little did I know. Yeah, but he shows up every day. I was too much of a brat. But I'm getting long-winded and I don't remember my point exactly, but I'm glad that people mostly say your name right, hopefully.
Now they do, I guess.
Good.
Sometimes. Yeah.
So are both of your parents Puerto Rican or
they are?
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Look at you. I don't know why I say look at you. It doesn't matter. My favorite thing about being Hispanic, but then my stepfather being a different type of Hispanic, and then living in the ghetto. We grew up in really rough areas. I grew up in really rough areas. And it was so funny because you'd have this white couple be like, oh, because they see my little blonde white mama and then this very dark-skinned Mexican guy and then this little brown-haired boy running around being a menace. And they'd be like, oh, great. And we'd be like, yeah, whatever. We don't have to be your friend. And then we go upstairs and there'd be a black couple and they'd be like, oh, great. And be like, bullshit. This is bullshit. Nobody likes that we're mixed. Duh! And then we just didn't care because Rick was the toughest SOB. He would just be like, who cares what they think? They're ugly. That's what he would say. He would just say stuff like that.
Oh.
So anyway, I'm getting carried away. I also don't get to talk to a lot of other Hispanic people about growing up Hispanic. So it can be a little exciting.
I'm glad. That's good.
It was a bonus when I was like, oh, Puerto Rican. Okay. Because being Portuguese, people often think I said Puerto Rican. So they're like, just not in a mean way. They'll just be like, because you're Puerto Rican, right? And I'm like, Portuguese. Oh. And I'm like, close, except 6,000 miles.
Right.
So, anyway, but I really appreciate you sitting down and talking about this and being willing to get so deep into it.
Of course. It was a great time.
I hope this doesn't ruin your self-proclaimed bimbo status.
Most bimbos are actually really smart. We're taking that word back. In
Damn
case
right.
anyone didn't know. Yeah.
And I want to mention your YouTube channel, which is phenomenal. And I really want people to go check it out if they like YouTube horror content and funny stuff, is Sweet and Spooky on YouTube.
That's me.
And if you search Sweet and Spooky on social media, they'll find you. It'll be linked in the show notes. And I look forward to hopefully we'll do this again very soon.
Yes, I hope so. More trauma for us.
Oh, no, maybe we should just call it Trauma, the podcast. But no, we'll be back and we'll be talking about other films that scared the ever-loving Shiite out of us. But until next time, I've been Enrique Couto.
I am Celise, Sweet Spooky, your girl.
Your girl. And we'll catch you next time.